are live. Good evening and welcome to the Transfer Show. It is myself and it is Dave Davis. And Dave has got a bag full of tricks for you this evening. I've rarely been as giddy ahead of a show with this man here because we've rarely had as many stories which contain potential for change up and happiness and smiley faces left, right, and center. Now, they are stories. Don't be getting excited, but they are stories which we haven't had for many, many times in the past when we've been rocking through this podcast and focusing on how Chelsea are getting on and everyone else who's doing things. There are at least, Dave, so many links in and around the Liverpool sort of universe. And the thing that seems to be the catalyst is this latest news about Trent, which is where we're going to start. But before we do, man, are you giddy also?
I actually don't know what's happened in the last sort of 48 hours. About like when the Trent news broke, like we knew it was coming, let's be honest, but we were quite like on the back of two defeats, the international break and this, you were like, where's this all going? And then, as you know, we got some bits of info and we started screenshotting each other and we just became that like Vince McMahon meme, like one contract story. Yeah, like one transfer story, like 3 transfer, and it just like we were literally even today just firing stuff, and we are like, nothing's definite, as you said. You never know 100%, but it just feels like someone somewhere has like that meme just prodded Liverpool with that stick and said, "Do something," and someone's gone, "Oh shit, Trent's leaving. We best do something, aren't we? Yeah, go on then, right? And off we go," type of thing, and it just feels like giddiness, we're off to the races type of thing. I'm genuinely excited for this one.
I am too, and I'm loving the idea of multiple changes around the club. I'm loving the idea of the potential positive news around people remaining on the back of this Trent news as well, because it does seem to be a catalyst for a lot in that regard. And maybe it is as simple as it has now made a clear financial picture for those people who are pulling strings in that regard when it comes to contracts, when it comes to making moves for other players, because a lot of those stories are starting to firm up as well. Yeah. We're hearing very definite rumors about very definite players, which is all very, very exciting. So let's start with the Trent stuff. Now, most people will be very familiar with it at this stage. They'll all have their own takes. You and I are not ever going to be in the sort of top red or bottom red category. We don't seem to fit. We seem to be citizens of no nation when it comes to the Liverpool fan base. We're certainly not going to be out there, burning jerseys. And similarly, we're not going to be saying, "Oh, fair play to Trent and let him go out." I for one will be clapping him as he goes. So I think we're in that middle ground where we're a little bit pissed off. I think that's the rational way to be, a bit justifiably annoyed with the way that it's been done. There are ways of doing things, Dave, and this did not feel like one of the best ways that this could have been done and handled. Talk to us about what we know, because a lot of people are still, I noticed, using qualifiers like "if" and "it seems" and so on. To me now, this story that we all felt was likely to happen is now absolutely definite in my mind. There's way too much out there for it to be anything else. And I'm not relying purely on the old Pornstein angles. It just feels like now it's been broke. The news is out there and we are all being sort of allowed to deal with it. And it's a problematic procedure, Dave. Talk to us about what we know.
Well, what we know is pretty much any major journal, like you said, it's not just like David Ornstein, Paul Joyce has wrote about it, that they've all wrote about it. It's out in the world of football, isn't it? That Trent Alexander-Arnold has pretty much agreed a deal with Real Madrid. Now, honestly, like you said, the fact people say "if," well, this is 99.9% done, unless his biro breaks on the day. That's the only thing that stops this happening, really, isn't it, in that regard? And there's already journos doing articles on Real Madrid are asking to get him early, Trev, aren't they? Because they want him for the Club World Cup. Like, I don't really know why anyone's filing it under any type of "if." And I know people are putting there in the chat panel about Romano told us about this last March. We've said it before. Other AI contributors have used that phrase, Trent McManaman. This has been going round since like Jan 2024, hasn't it? It's been well sort of led to. And you start looking back at things, don't you, Trevor, as we've talked about, and the fact he only signed a 4-year renewal, which seemed a bit strange, and now you're thinking, did he envisage this? Was this always the plan all along? What would happen? What would occur? And like you said, there's just a bit of a taste, and I did it on a show the other day, I can't remember who, but said, do you remember when he did that celebration and did that little thing in his ear? Was it, I think, West? And now you start looking and thinking, yeah, that doesn't look too smart now, does it, all of a sudden? And yeah, it's, unless you're living under a rock or you just want to deny like everything, then Trent Alexander-Arnold is set to become a Real Madrid player. So, you know what? He's done brilliant and all that. Everyone's got a right to an opinion. But like the transfer show, we're maybe giddy about what it could mean coming up.
That's exactly what it means to me right now, because having sort of put it to bed in my mind that it was highly likely it would happen, it was just a blessed relief. The minute I saw your tweet about, for the love of God, just confirm it to the club, that's exactly where I was mentally as well. Can we just get that like absolutely nailed down, so now we can start to think about what that might mean? And it seems, without it having been made official, that that's exactly where we are, because these stories are starting to circulate now with great vigor. But just before we move into them, and that is the exciting part of the show, nobody wants to think about a lad who had made himself the greatest player in his position in world football leaving the club. No one wants to talk about or think about the angle of, the lad you saw the videos all today, all these interviews with Trent talking about how he's a local lad, he wants to play the rest of his career there. Something happened. We don't know what that is. It could be as simple as ambition. It could be PlayStation brain. It could be any number of things that happened in his own personal life that made him want to make a change. We don't know that. And all we can go on is the lad's words. They were absent, Dave. There was nothing being said by Trent Alexander-Arnold about wanting to stay and captain this club in the real times when it mattered, when this contract was really becoming an issue. So you can understand, can't you, that an awful lot of people have this cynical view that, well, it was a long-term plan and that any of the things that were being said were guff. I think that's probably harsh, but I do get it. It's hard. It's easy to understand why people have seen this as a strategy, that it was only a 4-year contract that was signed, that he'd be getting out at 26, which is, again, sort of just that little bit subprime in terms of years, even though it's not really when you've played as much as Trent has. I mean, what do you make about it? Do you see a cynicism in the way that this was approached, or do you think it was a sort of a confluence of things? The end of the Jurgen period, the change up in the backroom staff that happened for a couple of years there and sort of set things back and changed the way that we were doing business. How do you see it? Like, what do you attribute this to?
People love it when it's simple, don't they? And it's just like, it's his fault, it's binary, it's this, that's it type of, and I get some people that have seen that. And ultimately, it's Trent that makes the decision. He needs to own that one way or another, however you react. Ultimately, the overall majority, and I want to use that word, majority of the responsibility sits at his door. And silence tends to come in two forms, doesn't it? It tends to come in like, there's a dignified silence where you keep your counsel, you keep your peace, there's a dignity to it and a reason to do it. Silence also comes in like a guilty, when you don't want to say anything because you know as soon as you open your mouth, you're going to incriminate yourself further. And I'm leaning towards the second one. I think that's why there's been a lot of silence since we've got, the information we have and talked about it. So there is that. And ultimately, people will talk about his brother and his role as the agent, but Trent decides ultimately yes or no. He is a grown man, so that's where it comes down to. But you're 100% right to mention the other bits, because like Jurgen Klopp, I adore Jurgen Klopp. He's one of my heroes, deserves a statue at Anfield. What he's given us those years, brilliant. But he almost brought in a structure, didn't he, with Schmacker, his mate, as a non-sporting director. Contracts were allowed to run down. And there's a bit there where you say FSG, however form you want to deal with that, past and present. They let it get to this stage as well, didn't they? Where 3 of the stars have got a year left to go. And the whole point, I think, of the reset that we've talked about is we need to get back to smart business. So everyone plays a part in getting to this stage. But ultimately, when it comes down to brass tacks, Trent Alexander-Arnold chooses to make that decision. And this may sound a bit like cynical, bitter. I don't know what the phrase is, Trev. I don't want him to just be able to almost skulk away quietly. It feels like somehow he should be made to own this decision. Like, you've made this call, own it. Don't think you're going to get away all smiles and happiness and all that. You're not going to ruin our title parade and all that type of thing. But I am intrigued to see how the club do eventually, when eventually they communicate this.
Yeah, I mean, this period of the season that's coming up that everybody's taking for absolute granted, and me as a natural pessimist refuses to do so. But I do understand that people are optimistic about our chances of getting this title over the line. We have a lot of great footballers, and all they have to do is show up in 5 or 6 games and the job is done. But I do understand an awful lot of people are starting to think about that and what it might mean. I think it'll be handled with just quiet dignity. I think he'll be part of the celebrations. He'll do a few claps. He'll get a few claps. There'll be a few raucous people in the ground that'll boo him. Very few, probably. That'll be mostly online, the jersey burning numpties. And I think that's how it'll go. I think it'll be with a whimper rather than a bang. He should be heading away, if he's going to head away, as a hero, having done something amazing. And he's, I think, partially, if you'll pardon my friends, fucked it for himself. So that's just how it's going to be. But the great news is that we have a positive angle out of this because, well, at least according to our pal Ornstein, it's talking now about how this means there's a good chance that the contract situation for the other 2 guys, who I think you and I are on the record as saying that we'd have preferred to keep, right, are now more possible. There's all sorts of tweets, whether you believe them or not, from all sorts of sources saying that the Salah deal is closer than it had been, that the Van Dijk deal, to a lesser extent, I'm seeing them, is closer than it had been. We are seeing these things, Dave, and they are coming from sources which people can put any level of credence they want into. But will you walk folks through that? Because again, it's not given to everybody to be online all day and keeping an eye on stuff. So for the benefit of people who are not seeing those things and where they're coming from, this knock-on effect now on the contract talks, where are we going with that?
Yeah. And even today, that there's, as we said, we've been tweeting and messaging or sending things to each other recently. But for those that missed it, David Ornstein earlier today did a Q&A for The Athletic, and no shock, was asked about Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk and their deals. And no change, but maybe the phraseology comes in. As he replied, as mentioned in previous weeks and months, Liverpool are optimistic both will renew their contracts, and it's just a matter of time. Until it's done, we can't say for certain. It would appear there's work still to do, but there's nothing to suggest Liverpool's confidence has changed on these 2. So that's still, that's an updated as we've got today about an hour or so ago. So that's important to say. Then, Trev, God bless Egypt, because there's a story that comes out from Egypt from various sources. I'll probably butcher the pronunciations, but Mazraoui, an Egyptian source, an outlet there, says that almost the breaking news comes out. And as you say, people are like, that's wrong, that's false, because apparently Gary 46, a carpenter from Somerset, is updated with all the news in Egypt. But hey ho, that's how it works. And they say, Salah, because of the Trent situation, that money is available and that is moving closer. Then, and we've got him on the screen for those that can't see it, Ismail Mahmoud, probably the biggest name in Egyptian football, does clarify that it's a very reliable source. It says it makes a lot of sense. And his info is that Mo will continue. And actually, just from the bits when we're trying to dig around at the same time on Mo, is maybe not direct news on it, but this gives me heart, Trev, as I told you just before we went live. All the sources we're reaching out to say, these 2 guys, Mazraoui and Ismail Mahmoud, these have interviewed Salah a number of times. They know his camp well. That doesn't mean 100%, but it doesn't delete from the credibility, does it? Let's be completely clear on that. So there's a bit of a warmth, hopefully, and something's moving forward with Mo Salah in that regard. You had the update, as you said, from Ornstein on Virgil van Dijk. And again, dependent on which sources you want to believe or what credence you stake in them, there's even stories in the last couple of hours about Connor Bradley being closer to his renewal. Remember, we mentioned him last week and how his agent was just waiting to see, quite smartly, what was happening with Trent and how that would do for his figures as well. So there's nothing definite. There's nothing 100% confirmed. But let's be honest, from where we were about 24 hours ago, there's 3 good things there, isn't there?
It's incredibly positive, I think, because there are very few people who thought Trent was staying, or very few people who've been paying attention to the evidence that thought Trent was staying. If they thought Virgil and Mo were staying, there was evidence. You could see it in things that they were saying. You could sense it from their frustration about the contracts not being done. That in and of itself implied that they wanted to be around. There was nothing from the other fella. So I think most people were feeling the fact that that was going to be a done deal. Now, having had everything taken away from us in terms of, possibly our 3 most sort of marketable and attractive assets in terms of just being the best at what they do. Now we have hope on the big 2. And they are the big 2. It's like, don't get it twisted in your head. People can get all bent out of shape about what Trent is and what he is and what he represents and all the rest of it. He is a very, very good player, a guy who could have gone down as the greatest to ever play right back for the club if he had hung around. I think that may be gone from him now. It will be, of course, for some people. He'll be a feature, and he was absolutely in there for me. But I think now this will possibly change things. But to have hope around Van Dijk staying, who has seasons left in him, to have hope around Salah, who is so ridiculously productive this season that it makes no sense to have anything other than clamps into that lad and keeping him at Anfield.